In Chapter 1. Fea vomits in the bathroom, plagued by nightmares of Amarantha's dungeons 3 months after escaping. Struggling with her new immortal body, she damages objects unintentionally. She examines her tattooed left hand, a reminder of her bargain with Rhysand for saving her life. Fea hasn't heard from Rhys since Amarantha's defeat, but remains haunted by their deal. She reflects on the trauma she and Tamlin share, both suffering from nightmares. Tamlin, though aware, remains silent about her distress. Their unspoken agreement is to ignore the lingering effects of their ordeal. Fea feels broken, doubting even eternity could heal her. In Chapter 2, Fea argues with Tamlin about visiting the village to aid recovery efforts. Tamlin refuses, citing safety concerns from Amarantha's beasts. Lucienne silently advises Fea not to push the issue. Frustrated and feeling useless, Fea reflects on her confinement and impending wedding. High Priestess Ianthe, a manipulative ally, helps with the wedding plans. Despite Ianthe's attempts to bond with fire, she remains uneasy about her future. Tamlin's overprotectiveness and constant reminders of past traumas leave Fea feeling trapped and restless. The chapter ends with Tamlin joining Fea in bed, underscoring her internal turmoil. In Chapter 3, Tamlin is absent, so Lucian inspects a nearby village with Fea. She hasn't left the grounds in months and feels scrutinized by the guards. Fea confronts Lucian about lying regarding a Naga attack. Lucian explains the need for order and Tamlin's protective nature. He reveals the tithe is approaching, where Fea will need to sit with Tamlin. Lucian shares his painful past, reinforcing Tamlin's fear of losing Fea. In the village, Fea and Lucienne offer help but are politely rejected. Learning the villagers prefer rebuilding without reminders of their trauma under Amarantha's rule. In Chapter 4, in the days before her wedding, Fea endures tedious social gatherings, feeling detached and overwhelmed. Clinging to Ianthe for support, she navigates constant introductions with Tamlin's court, haunted by memories of past trials. On the eve of the wedding, Fea is plagued by nightmares and anxiety. As the ceremony begins, she is consumed by panic and self-doubt, feeling unworthy and trapped. Just as she is about to break down, thunder cracks, and Rhysand appears, interrupting the wedding and addressing Fea with a mischievous greeting. His unexpected arrival halts the ceremony, leaving Fea's fate uncertain. In Chapter 5, High Lord of the Night Court interrupts Fea's wedding, asserting his right to call in their bargain. Tamlin and Lucienne hesitate to act as Rhys immobilizes them with a gesture. Despite Fea's distress, Rhys takes her to the Night Court. The new setting is unexpectedly beautiful, and Rhys clarifies Fea is a guest, not a prisoner, emphasizing her safety. He explains the Night Court's structure, distinct from Amarantha's rule. Rhys hints at Fea's inner turmoil and distress. In the morning they have breakfast together, during which Rhys probes Fea's thoughts and discusses the bond between them. In Chapter 6, Rhysand insists on teaching Fea to read and shield, skills necessary for her new role as a High Lord's wife. Despite initial resistance, she agrees, recognizing her illiteracy almost cost her life before. They engage in a tense lesson, during which Rhys tests her mental defenses. Fea meets Mor, Rhysand's cousin, who offers a warm welcome. Rhysand hints at potential powers transferred to Fea from the 7 High Lords who resurrected her. They move to a chamber with maps, and Rhys reveals the impending threat of war that could break the wall dividing their world, endangering her human family. In Chapter 7, Fea learns from Rhysand that the King of Hybern plans to invade Prythian and break the wall separating their land from the mortal realm, using stealth and trickery. Rhysand reveals that Fea might possess powers from all 7 High Lords and insists she must learn to control them to help in the war. He also informs her of a recent attack on a temple, hinting at growing unrest. Despite her initial reluctance, Fea is given a week to consider his offer. Upon returning home, she is greeted by a worried Tamlin, who inspects her for any harm. In Chapter 8, Tamlin returns briefly from the border before overseeing the tithe ceremony. Fey emissaries present their offerings, including a water wraith who pleads inability to pay due to a depleted lake. Tamlin, unmoved, demands payment or double next time, causing Fea to intervene by giving her jewelry. This sparks conflict at dinner with Tamlin and Lucian, where Fea challenges court traditions, leading to a tense confrontation and Fea briefly experiencing Lucienne's thoughts before storming off. In Chapter 9, Fair wrestles with guilt over her actions at the tithe and her unsettling experience with Lucian's thoughts. She seeks solace with Tamlin late at night, where they reconcile after their earlier conflict. Tamlin gives Fair a painting kit as a peace offering, but their conversation turns tense when Fair expresses frustration over her restricted freedom and the suffocating security measures. In a moment of emotional turmoil, Fair inadvertently unleashes her newfound power, destroying the gift and revealing the depth of her inner turmoil. In Chapter 10, Fair unintentionally unleashes a powerful protective shield in a moment of emotional turmoil, startling Tamlin and causing physical devastation. Tamlin begs for forgiveness and promises to improve, but their relationship remains strained. Fair spends her days in isolation, grappling with her newfound powers and the tension with Tamlin. When Rhysand unexpectedly appears, tensions escalate between him and Tamlin, leading to a confrontation where Tamlin offers Rhysand anything to release Fair from her bargain. Rhysand takes Fair away abruptly, leaving Tamlin stunned and Fair uncertain of her future. In Chapter 11, Rhysand returns unexpectedly to Fair, urging her to eat breakfast with him and discussing their strained bond. He presses Fair about recent events at the Spring Court, revealing his concern for her well-being and offering his help. Despite Fair's reluctance, Rhysand persists, trying to convince her to work with him against a looming threat. Fair remains defiant, asserting her independence and refusing to be manipulated. Rhysand continues to visit, attempting to engage Fair and offering support, but she resists his efforts, asserting her determination to stay out of any forthcoming conflict. In Chapter 12, Fair is confined at Tamlin's estate due to a mysterious threat. Tamlin and Lucian leave to address it, leaving Ianthe to keep Fair company. Fair feels isolated but finds solace in reading. When Tamlin returns, Fair's growing powers and the threat against her are discussed in secret. Tamlin decides to keep Fair locked inside with magical barriers for her safety, leading to Fair feeling imprisoned and desperate to escape. Mor and Rhysand eventually rescue her, breaking through Tamlin's defences and taking her to safety, where Fair collapses in exhaustion and relief. In Chapter 13 begins with Fair waking in the night court to find Rhysand watching over her, his demeanour a mix of concern and guardedness. She learns she unconsciously used a power that frightened others at Tamlin's court, prompting her to question returning. Rhysand explains the legal complications and offers her sanctuary in the night court. Fair wrestles with her decision, feeling trapped between safety and her unresolved past. Eventually, she chooses to accompany Rhysand to Valaris, a vibrant city recovering from past trauma. The chapter ends with Fair's arrival at a warm, lived-in house, marking a stark contrast to her experiences in Prythian. In Chapter 14 begins with Fair entering Rhysand's townhouse in Valaris, where she meets Nuala and Ceridwen, Rhysand's companions. Rhysand explains the security and privacy of his home, assuring Fair of her safety within Valaris. Outside, two of Rhysand's inner circles, Cassian and another, arrive boisterously. Fair chooses to avoid them, opting instead to rest in a tranquil bedroom offered by Nuala and Ceridwen. She learns about Valaris's protective history and struggles with her emotions and memories of Amarantha's cruelty. Fair eventually succumbs to exhaustion, seeking solace in sleep amid her turbulent thoughts. In Chapter 15, Fair awakens in Rhysand's home in Valaris, feeling both weary and relieved after the events at the Spring Court. Rhysand's inner circle leaves, and he escorts Fair outside where she marvels at Valaris, a hidden city untouched for millennia. Rhysand explains how he protected Valaris during Amarantha's reign, showcasing the vibrant city to Fair. They explore markets and artistic quarters, where Fair wrestles with her emotions and the contrast between her past and present, prepares Fair to meet his inner circle at the House of Wind, where she reluctantly agrees to fly with him despite her fears. In Chapter 16, Fair meets Rhysand's companions, Cassian and Asriel, both powerful Illyrian warriors with unique abilities. They jest about Rhysand's attire and their roles as his commanders. Amren, mysterious and formidable, joins them. Over dinner, Fair learns their backgrounds, the brutal Illyrian traditions, and Rhysand's mother's tragic past. Discussions hint at deeper alliances and secrets, setting the stage for Fair's integration into Rhysand's inner circle amidst looming threats. In Chapter 17, Fair wrestles with haunting dreams of Amarantha and struggles with newfound powers. Rysand comforts her through a rough night, revealing vulnerabilities and deepening their bond. They prepare to visit a mysterious prison, revealing its ancient origins and dangerous inhabitants, triggering Fea's fear and reluctance. In Chapter 18, Amren surprises Fea in her bedroom, giving her a protective amulet for the prison. Rhys guides Fea up the treacherous slopes to the prison, explaining its dangers and guards. They enter through bone gates, descending into its depths. Inside, they meet the bone carver, who reveals secrets about the cauldron and the Book of Breathings. They learn of Hybern's plans and potential ways to counteract them. They leave with crucial information, navigating back through the prison's eerie halls. In Chapter 19, Rhys returns with Cassian and Azriel to discuss their next moves. They confirm the bone carver's information about the cauldron and the missing Book of Breathings. Rhys plans to confront Hybern, knowing war is imminent. To test Fea's abilities, Rhys sends her to the Weaver, a dangerous entity, to retrieve an object. They also discuss Fea becoming an emissary to the human realm. The chapter ends with Rhys preparing Fea for the mission, emphasizing secrecy and caution due to the escalating tensions with Hybern. In Chapter 20, Rhysand transports Fea to an ancient, eerie wood in Prithian's neutral territory, where the Weaver of the wood resides. They approach a cottage where the Weaver spins thread on an old wheel, singing haunting songs. Fea navigates the cluttered cottage, searching for an object while wary of traps. She finds a ring with a unique sapphire that seems to call to her. Tension mounts as Fea prepares to take the ring, uncertain of the Weaver's reaction. The chapter ends with Fea poised to seize the ring and make her escape, unsure of what consequences await her next move. In Chapter 21, Fea retrieves Rhysand's ring from the Weaver's house but is trapped when the Weaver blocks all exits. Fea escapes through the chimney, injuring herself in the process. Rhysand rescues her, and they return to Valaris, where Fea faces scrutiny for her actions. She asserts her determination to learn combat skills from Cassian. Rhysand reveals the ring's significance and challenges Fea to master her panic and use her abilities effectively. They discuss the threat of Ianthe and Rhysand's past confrontation with her. Fea confronts her evolving powers and begins training with Rhysand. In Chapter 22, Rhysand decides to take the group to the mortal realm due to lack of communication from the Summer Court. They discuss attire for the journey. Mor reveals the oppressive treatment of females in the Court of Nightmares. She decides not to accompany them to the mortal realm due to discomfort. Fea chooses to fly with Azriel over Rhysand and Cassian, and they travel through a tear in the magical wall to the mortal lands. They land near the coastline, preparing to explore Fea's homeland. In Chapter 23, Fea returns to her family estate after a year, concealed by Rhys's glamours. She encounters Mrs. Laurent and Elaine, who are shocked to see her transformed appearance as a high fae. Nesta, initially cold, eventually listens as Fea explains the threat from Hybern and her plan to bring high fae and queens to their home. Elaine supports Fea's plan, despite risks to her impending marriage. Nesta reluctantly agrees to help, deciding to send away the servants to keep their activities secret. Fea and Nesta discuss Elaine's marriage and Fea's experiences at the Night Court, leading to a tentative offer for Nesta to meet Fea's allies. In Chapter 24, Elaine persuades the household staff to leave with bribes. Mrs. Laurent promises secrecy. Rhys, Cassian, and Azriel arrive as the staff departs. They meet Fea and her sisters in the dining room. Tensions rise over dinner, with Nesta challenging the Fae guests and Cassian confronting Nesta's past actions. Fea and Rhys write a letter to the queens while the sisters retire for the night. Fea and Rhys discuss their pasts and their evolving dynamics, with Rhys revealing Fea's ongoing wage and provisions in Valaris. They share a moment of understanding before the chapter closes. In Chapter 25, Fea and Rhysand take a day off to train in a secluded snowy forest. Rhysand teases Fea about her powers and suggests she practice using a candle magically. After he leaves, Fea struggles with her abilities, feeling frustrated and distracted. She exchanges notes magically with Rhysand, who is bored at home. As Fea waits alone, she is suddenly attacked by the ACOTAR, who threatens her life. In Chapter 26, Fea confronts the ACOTAR, who reveals that the King of Hybern seeks her. Rhysand and Azriel intervene, capturing the ACOTAR for interrogation. Rhysand admits to using Fea as bait for the ACOTAR and promises to protect her. Fea confronts Rhysand about his plans and her safety, expressing anger and frustration. In a burst of rage, Feyre tests her newfound strength against Rhysand, demonstrating her ability to winnow and surprising both of them. Their confrontation ends in a playful but intense physical struggle in the snow, showcasing Feyre's growing powers and their complicated relationship. In Chapter 27, Feyre confronts Rhysand after being used as bait, asserting her independence and refusing to be treated like a pawn. Despite their tension, Rhysand apologizes, and they discuss the King of Hybern's interest in Feyre's ability to nullify the cauldron's power with the book. Feyre feels conflicted about her role and her feelings towards Valaris. Rhysand shows remorse, and they return to her family's house together. In Chapter 28, Feyre spends time with Rhysand and her sisters at breakfast. Cassian and Asriel deal with the ACOTAR, leaving Feyre conflicted about her role and her feelings towards Valaris. They visit the village to mail letters covertly, then return home where Feyre prepares to part ways with Rhysand. However, he informs her of their successful mission regarding the ACOTAR and discusses future plans involving the Book of Breathings and interactions with the mortal queens. Feyre asserts her independence and desire to explore Valaris. Rhysand invites her out for dinner, signalling a shift in their relationship dynamics. Later, Amren visits Feyre, revealing insights about the court and the dynamics between Rhysand's inner circle. In Chapter 29 finds Feyre and the inner circle exploring Valaris at night, enjoying the vibrant cityscape and its offerings despite looming threats. They traverse lively markets, dine at a riverside restaurant and engage in light-hearted banter. Rhysand reveals Valaris's hidden nature and discusses his personal struggles. Later, Feyre and Rhysand share a poignant moment overlooking the city, bonded by music that once comforted Feyre during her darkest times. Their playful notes continue, teasing each other with innuendos and maintaining a connection amidst ongoing dangers. Feyre's dreams are haunted by the ACOTAR, highlighting the persistent threat they face. In Chapter 30, Cassian trains Feyre in hand-to-hand combat atop the House of Wind. Despite struggling with her left side, she learns under his guidance. Meanwhile, Rhysand and Asriel spar intensely nearby, both bearing tattoos of Illyrian warriors. Cassian confronts Feyre about her letter to Tamlin, triggering emotional turmoil. He comforts Feyre, sharing his own trauma and advising her on coping with guilt. They explore her newfound ability to summon darkness, finding solace in its soothing nature. The chapter ends with Feyre jokingly asking Cassian for a ride home, showing a bond deepening amidst their shared struggles and growth. In Chapter 31, Feyre continues her intense training with Cassian, struggling with new techniques and the pressure of impending missions. The group discusses recent events and tensions rise between Cassian, Amren, and more. Rhys announces a trip to the Summer Court, inviting Feyre and Amren due to their unique skills and relationships. Cassian is excluded due to past conflicts. Despite objections, plans proceed, focusing on retrieving important artifacts. Feyre and Rhys share flirtatious banter, hinting at their evolving relationship dynamics. The chapter sets up upcoming challenges and intrigues, emphasizing the team's dynamics and individual strengths. In Chapter 32, Feyre, Amren and Rhys arrive in Adriata, the Summer Court, where they meet High Lord Tarquin and his courtiers. Despite tensions and suspicions, they discuss Hybern's imminent threat and Feyre's status as Rhys's emissary. Tarquin, cautious but hospitable, hosts them and warns against potential conflicts over Feyre's former ties to Tamlin. Amidst diplomatic exchanges and veiled threats, Feyre asserts her independence and strategic importance. The chapter ends with an uneasy truce and plans for a party, revealing underlying power dynamics and personal histories that threaten to complicate their fragile alliances. In Chapter 33, Feyre settles into a lavish suite provided by Tarquin. Rhys joins her, urging caution in dealing with their hosts. He hints at Tarquin's interest in Feyre, warning of the dangers. At a grand dinner on Tarquin's pleasure barge, Feyre subtly probes Tarquin about a hidden treasure, sensing his genuine offer to show it to her. Their conversation turns to social disparities in Prythian. Feyre feels increasingly isolated as Rhys focuses on Crusader. Seeking solace, she leaves the party early, encountering Amren and Varian in the shadows. The chapter ends with tensions rising as Feyre feels disconnected from Rhysand. In Chapter 34, centres around Feyre's interactions with Tarquin and Rhysand and her quest to find a mysterious book. Fair wakes in Tarquin's palace, reflecting on her role as a weapon against the king and her longing for Valaris. She spends time alone until Tarquin's servant, Nuala, prepares her for a meeting with Tarquin and Amren. Fair explores Tarquin's palace, discovering various treasures, but not the book she seeks. Later, she confronts Rhysand, who shows jealousy over her interactions with Tarquin. Their conversation reveals tensions and unresolved feelings between them. The chapter ends with a symbolic toast between Fair and Rhysand, emphasizing their shared dreams and vulnerabilities. In Chapter 35 revolves around Fair's strategic efforts to find the book while navigating political dynamics in Adriata. Rhys excludes her from key meetings with Amren to distract Tarquin. Fair discreetly explores the city, noting its scars from past conflicts. She saves Tarquin from suspicion by subtly manipulating his thoughts, ensuring his cooperation. At dinner, Fair hints at the temple's significance, confirmed by Tarquin's reaction. Later, Rhys and Amren plan a nighttime infiltration to retrieve the book, coordinating with Fair. They strategize around guards and wards, preparing for a covert mission while leveraging Fair's emerging skills and alliances. In Chapter 36, Fair endures a day feigning interest in Tarquin's mainland and his people, knowing they suspect her motives. She and Amren secretly plan to retrieve the book hidden in a temple ruin, braving the muck and tide. With Rhys's help, they bypass guards and wards, uncovering the temple's entrance. Inside, they find a chamber protected by ancient seals. Overcoming the locks, they discover a lead box containing the book, its power unsettling. As they prepare to leave, the chamber seals shut, hinting at the book's formidable nature. They must escape before the rising tide traps them underground. In Chapter 37, Amren and the protagonist are caught in a flooded chamber after retrieving a mysterious box. They struggle against rising waters until rescued by water wraiths, who take them to safety. Rhysand appears, having dealt with guards alerted by their intrusion. Despite their near-death experience, Rhysand focuses on retrieving the box. Back at their safe house, exhausted and shaken, they open the box to find a metal artifact with inscriptions in a mysterious language. Amren identifies it as the Leshon HaKodesh, the Holy Tongue, hinting at its immense power and potential to help them in their struggles against formidable enemies. In Chapter 38, Fair and Rhysand discuss their visit to the summer court over breakfast. Exhausted, Fair falls asleep and wakes to find Rhysand on the rooftop patio. He reveals stealing a book from Tarquin to protect their mission, showing Fair blood rubies meant for them. Rhysand grapples with the consequences and his friendship with Tarquin. Later, Fair interrupts Rhysand's brooding, teasing him to lift his spirits. That night, she confronts Rhysand in a nightmare, calming his dark memories. They share a moment of understanding, and Fair leaves, her feelings for Rhysand deepening despite their challenges. In Chapter 39, Fair visits Amren in her apartment to discuss decoding a book using an ancient language. Amren struggles with relearning the language, while Fair brings her blood to drink. They discuss Rhysand's absence and Amren's living preferences. Meanwhile, Asriel continues his unsuccessful attempts to infiltrate mortal queen courts, causing frustration. Fair trains with Cassian and Rhysand, mastering new powers and preparing for political maneuvers. Eventually, the mortal queens agree to meet at Fair's family estate, demanding strict conditions. The chapter ends with their arrival through winnowing, setting the stage for crucial negotiations. In Chapter 40, Fair and Rhysand meet with the mortal queens, a diverse group in appearance and temperament. They discuss the looming threat of war and plead for the queen's aid or the release of an artifact, the book. The queens refuse, citing strategic reasons and historical animosities. Moore intervenes passionately, invoking historical alliances and a hidden island where Fae and humans coexist peacefully. Rhysand promises proof of his intentions and dismisses the queens, leaving tensions high and future negotiations uncertain. The chapter ends with unresolved diplomacy and simmering animosity among all parties involved. In Chapter 41, the group returns to Valaris with Amren looking unwell. Rhys, in a contemplative mood, leads them to the courtyard. Rhys reveals that humans seek proof of their good intentions. They discuss strategies, but conclude they must show rather than tell. Rhys plans to use the Veritas orb from Mor's family to prove Valaris's existence to the Queens. Fair, troubled by Rhys's upcoming role and Mor's past, offers support. Rhys hesitates to involve Fair in his darker dealings but ultimately accepts her help. In Chapter 42 unfolds with tension as Rhys, Fair, Cassian and Azriel embark on a perilous mission to the Court of Nightmares. Evading ash arrows in treacherous mountain terrain, Fair insists on joining the hunt, proving her determination. They reach the concealed mountain city, where Rhysand asserts his power, using Fair as a strategic distraction. Amidst the intensity, Azriel returns with the stolen orb, confirming success. Tensions peak when Keir insults Fair, prompting Rhysand to assert his authority by breaking Keir's arm for disrespecting Fair, solidifying his protective stance. In Chapter 43 opens with Rhys and Fair arriving at a serene mountain lake, away from Valaris. Rhys expresses regret over his protective actions the previous night. Fair, conflicted, defends her choices but is unsure of their relationship's future. Rhys reveals vulnerabilities about being perceived as a Dark Lord and their differing expectations. The next day, Fair searches for Rhys in Valaris but finds him absent. She confronts Amren about Rhys's whereabouts and learns of a threat targeting Rhys's magic. Plans for their departure and upcoming celebrations unfold, leaving Fair reflective on their complex bond and uncertain future together. In Chapter 44, Fair prepares for Starfall, donning a stunning gown and reflecting on her transformation since becoming immortal. Cassian accompanies her to the rooftop garden, where they join a festive gathering at the House of Wind. Mor joins Fair, discussing their upcoming plans. Rhysand reconcile on a private balcony, sharing a moment during the celestial event of Starfall, where stars fill the sky and they contemplate the meaning behind the annual phenomenon. They share a rare moment of honesty and connection, ending with a decision to join the joyful celebration below. In Chapter 45, Rhysand and Fair arrive at the freezing Illyrian war camp in the northern mountains. The atmosphere is tense as they confront Lord Devlin, the camp leader, about training female warriors and occupying Rhys's family home. After asserting their authority, Rhys and Fair retreat to a secluded area for training, where Rhys reveals more about Illyrian customs and the challenges faced by female warriors. Fair learns about Rhys's tragic past involving Tamlin's family, and begins to understand the complexities of his relationships and the ongoing political tensions. The chapter ends with a moment of artistic inspiration between Fair and Rhysand. In Chapter 46, Fair feels the bitter cold as she reflects on her drained magic and the harsh training conditions imposed on them. At dinner with Cassian, Mor and Rhys, they discuss the progress of training the young recruits, revealing mixed results. Cassian uncovers neglect in their training schedules, and Mor identifies promising fighters among them. Later, Fair and Rhys retire upstairs in a shared lodging, contemplating their complex relationship. The chapter ends with Fair and Rhys setting off into the forest, encountering Spring Court sentinels led by Lucien, setting the stage for a tense confrontation. In Chapter 47, Fair faces a tense confrontation with Lucien and Spring Court sentinels in the forest. Lucien pleads for her to return to the Spring Court, citing Tamlin's changed behaviour and their need for unity. Fair refuses, feeling betrayed by Lucien's past inaction. As tensions rise, Fair reveals her newly acquired ability to shapeshift into Illyrian form, intimidating Lucien and his men. She warns them to stay away or face dire consequences, asserting her independence and newfound strength. Rhys intervenes, and they leave, reflecting on the encounter and Fair's evolving abilities. In Chapter 48, Rhys and Fair arrive at a tavern in a remote town, finding only a cramped attic room available. They discuss staying hidden from potential threats. Rhys goes downstairs alone to fetch food, disguising himself to avoid detection. Meanwhile, Fair changes into dry clothes and reflects on recent events with Tamlin and Lucien. Rhys returns with food, and they share a meal in their tiny room. They discuss their complicated feelings and attraction, leading to an intimate moment where they find comfort and solace in each other's arms before finally falling asleep. In Chapter 49, after a night of intimacy and connection with Rhysand, Fair awakens feeling safe. They spend a day flying together until they are ambushed. Rhysand shields Fair but is severely injured by ash arrows laced with poison. Fair tracks and kills their attackers, rescues Rhysand from captivity in a cave, and tends to his wounds, removing 7 arrows from his wings and back. Despite the danger, they manage to winnow to safety, where Rhysand collapses from exhaustion, reflecting on their bond and their shared desire for each other's safety. In Chapter 50, Fair tends to Rhysand's poisoned wounds throughout the night in a cave, realizing at dawn that the arrows were coated with a deadly poison called bloodbane. With Rhysand growing weaker, Fair seeks help from the Suriel, a mystical being in the forest. She traps and questions the Suriel, learning that the cure lies in her blood, infused with healing power. Returning to Rhysand, she feeds him a healing plant and her own blood, discovering in the process that he is her mate, a revelation that shocks and angers her. Despite their bond, Feyre's trust in Rhysand is severely shaken, leading to a tense confrontation before she demands they return to the Illyrian camp for safety. In Chapter 51, Feyre and Rhysand arrive outside a stone house, Rhysand's powers depleted. Cassian and Mor rush out to meet them. Feyre, distraught and seeking space, asks Mor to take her away. They teleport to a remote mountain cabin protected by wards. Mor explains it was a place for reflection in their youth. Feyre requests Mor not to reveal her location to Rhysand. Mor reluctantly agrees, revealing Rhysand's desire to tell Feyre about their mate bond. Feyre insists on solitude as Mor departs, leaving Feyre alone in the cabin to contemplate recent revelations. In Chapter 52, In Solitude, Feyre settles into the mountain cabin, relishing the comfort of a hot bath and simple pleasures like warm meals. She grapples with the revelation of being Rhysand's mate and reflects on her tumultuous past with Tamlin. Feyre confronts her feelings of betrayal and confusion, immersed in introspection and creative pursuits. She discovers art supplies and spends days painting intricate designs throughout the cabin, symbolizing her growing connection with Rhysand and his inner circle. Mor eventually visits, urging Feyre to consider talking to Rhysand and emphasizing the complexities of their shared history and relationships. In Chapter 53, Alone in the Mountain Cabin, Feyre spends days painting and imagining a future where she teaches art in Valaris. She envisions a life with Rhysand, filled with happiness and creative fulfillment. However, after 5 days of solitude, she grows restless and yearns for company. Mor returns unexpectedly, bringing supplies and news. In Chapter 54, Feyre and Rhys confront their deepening bond. Rhys arrives at Feyre's cottage, revealing his healed state from the bloodbane. They discuss Feyre's painting of their friends, highlighting tensions and unspoken feelings. Rhys recounts his captivity under Amarantha, detailing his resilience and plotting against her. He explains his discovery of Feyre through dreams, his conflicted emotions upon meeting her, and their shared history leading to the defeat of Amarantha. Rhys's revelation of their mating bond deepens their connection as they navigate their complex feelings and the implications of their bond. In Chapter 55 focuses on Feyre and Rhysand's intimate and emotional connection following a declaration of love and their bonding as mates. Feyre expresses her love for Rhysand, affirming her commitment and willingness to face challenges together. The chapter details their physical intimacy amidst a backdrop of emotional vulnerability and mutual trust. It explores their deepening bond and the complexities of their relationship, including discussions about potential future challenges such as pregnancy and external threats. The chapter concludes with a sense of mutual understanding and commitment to each other's well-being and happiness. In Chapter 56, Rhys winnows Feyre and their allies to the Illyrian camp for safety. Cassian's arrival sparks a fight with Rhys, revealing tensions over Feyre's mating bond. They brawl fiercely but cease after exhausting their anger. Rhys and Feyre then return to Valaris with their inner circle's support, where they receive a solemn pledge of loyalty. Dinner reveals Rhys and Feyre's intimacy and ongoing challenges. They depart for the mortal lands, carrying crucial knowledge to the queens. In Chapter 57, spring arrives in the human world as Feyre and Rhys meet with the eldest and golden-haired queens, accompanied by guards. They present the Veritas orb to prove their intentions and show Valaris. The queens remain skeptical, questioning motives and alliances. Nesta confronts them passionately about the impending danger and pleads for the Book of Breathings. After the queens leave, Rhys discovers a hidden box left behind by the Golden Queen, containing the book with a note of alliance. Nesta decides to stay in the mortal lands while Elaine struggles with her decision, influenced by Rhys's offer of sanctuary in Valaris. In Chapter 58, returning to Valaris, they retrieve the second half of the book. Amren struggles to decode it for 2 days. Rhys and Moore visit the Court of Nightmares covertly, ensuring the Veritas is returned to Keir. Cassian monitors Illyrian legions gathering for battle. No word from Feyre's sisters or the queens. Amidst planning and companionship, unexpected attack alarms Valaris. Hybern's army, led by creatures resistant to magic, invades, slaughtering and terrorizing the city. Feyre defends her home, unleashing her powers and fighting alongside her people until the ACOTAR, a deadly fairy, escapes. Feyre prepares to confront the impending war. In Chapter 59, Feyre confronts the ACOTAR, using mental and physical prowess to overpower it atop a rooftop in Valaris. She unleashes poisoned ash arrows, crippling its wings and engaging in a fierce, fiery battle. With relentless determination, Feyre ultimately plunges a dagger into the ACOTAR, avenging Rhysand and herself. As the darkness of impending doom approaches, she manages to defeat the ACOTAR, leaving it in ruins on the streets. It arrives comforting Feyre amidst the aftermath, reaffirming their bond as saviours of Valaris. Together they face the city's devastation and embrace their roles as protectors amid the chaos. In Chapter 60, Valaris is recovering from the recent attack, as Feyre and Rhys join the rest in planning their next move. Amren reveals the method to nullify the cauldron's power, involving a risky mission into Hybern's castle. Despite concerns about security and strategy, they agree on a plan. Feyre will infiltrate while Rhys stays outside to avoid detection. The group prepares meticulously, knowing their actions could provoke serious consequences. Meanwhile, Feyre and Rhys affirm their bond, deciding to share living quarters permanently. They discuss their future plans and the implications of their relationship amid the impending danger. In Chapter 61 sees Feyre and her allies preparing for a covert mission into Hybern's castle to nullify the cauldron's power. Armed and briefed, they travel swiftly, using various magical means. They arrive at the ancient, foreboding castle and enter through a hidden sea door. Feyre feels the pull of the cauldron, guiding them deeper into the castle's depths. They navigate through dark corridors, encountering minimal resistance due to strategic planning. Finally, they discover the cauldron in a guarded chamber, ready to execute their plan to neutralize its power. In Chapter 62, centers on Feyre's daring attempt to neutralize the cauldron's power using the 2 halves of the Book of Breathings. Despite warnings and interruptions, she successfully combines the halves and begins the spell. However, the process overwhelms her, merging her consciousness with the cauldron and the book. Before she can complete the spell, she's forcefully pulled back by Azriel. Upon regaining awareness, they are confronted by Jurian, a figure from Feyre's past. His unexpected arrival adds a new layer of tension and danger to their mission inside Hybern's castle. In Chapter 63 intensifies with Feyre's group facing Jurian's unexpected betrayal and subsequent capture by the King of Hybern. Rhysand confronts Jurian, who reveals Feyre's failed attempt to harness the cauldron's power and accuses her of stealing Rhysand's spells. The group's magic is suppressed, leaving them vulnerable. Jurian's vendetta against Moore escalates, and they are coerced into following the King of Hybern to his throne room, where they encounter Lucienne and Tamlin unexpectedly. The chapter ends with Feyre's shock and disbelief at their appearance, setting up new tensions and uncertainties. In Chapter 64 unfolds with Feyre confronting Tamlin's betrayal and the King of Hybern's machinations. Tamlin, aligned with the king, attempts to take Feyre back, but she refuses, unleashing her power against their captors. Amidst the tension, the king reveals his plan to use the cauldron and demands Feyre's compliance. As tensions rise, the scene escalates with the arrival of the 4 remaining queens, who bring Feyre's captive sisters before the court. The chapter ends with Feyre facing a dire situation, her resolve tested as she confronts the reality of her captivity and her sister's peril. In Chapter 65 is a pivotal and intense chapter, where the King of Hybern reveals his alliance with Jurian and captures Feyre and her sisters. He threatens them with the cauldron, intending to demonstrate its power to the mortal queens. Elaine is forced into the cauldron and emerges Fae, while Nesta defiantly curses the king as she undergoes the transformation herself. Cassian is gravely injured, Rhysand and the others are powerless to stop the atrocities, and Lucien discovers Elaine is his mate. The chapter ends with Nesta emerging transformed and powerful, setting the stage for further conflict and revelations. In Chapter 66 sees Feyre confronted by Lucienne about Elaine's status, prompting Nesta's defence. The King of Hybern tests the safety of being made, enticing the queens. Overwhelmed with hatred, Feyre unleashes a powerful spell, revealing hidden wards and severing them. She feigns submission to Tamlin to deceive the king, demanding the bond with Rhysand be broken. Despite Rhysand's protests, Feyre insists, prompting Tamlin to intervene and sever the bond painfully. Rhysand is devastated, but Feyre secures her sister's release and asserts her autonomy, leaving Rhysand behind. In Chapter 67, begins with Feyre awakening to find herself in Tamlin's arms, the mating bond with Rhysand severed. Rhysand is assisted by Mor and struggles with his injuries. Feyre directs Mor to rescue her sisters using the openings she created in the castle wards. Amidst chaos, Mor successfully rescues them despite Lucien's protests. Feyre confronts the King of Hybern, thanking him for allowing her sister's release. The king directs the queens to commence their plans around the cauldron, inciting tension among them and their guards. Durian taunts Lucienne, provoking a hostile exchange. Feyre asserts her determination to retrieve Elaine, prompting a chilling response from the king. She and Tamlin prepare to leave, leaving a threat to the king and his allies before winnowing away. In Chapter 68 begins with Rhysand returning to the townhouse, finding his allies injured and in need of urgent healing. Amren tends to Cassian and Asriel, demanding to know Feyre's whereabouts. Mor reveals that Feyre agreed to return to the Spring Court under false pretenses to save her sisters from the King of Hybern, who used them to demonstrate his power. Feyre persuaded the king to break the bond between her and Rhysand, although Amren insists such a bond cannot be broken. Rhysand reveals Feyre's plan to act as a spy within the enemy's ranks, now identified as the High Lady of the Night Court. They resolve to prepare for war against their enemies until Feyre's return. In Chapter 69, Feyre returns to the Spring Court with Tamlin's assistance, feeling conflicted between nostalgia and betrayal. She convinces Tamlin to involve her in his plans, determined to help retrieve her sisters. Feyre conceals her true intentions and the depth of her bond with Rhysand, playing along to gain access to information. Lucienne observes her closely, suspicious of her motives and the secrets she hides, aware of the dangerous game she's playing. Feyre manipulates Tamlin's trust, positioning herself to gather intelligence and eventually confront their enemies, plotting her next moves as the High Lady of the Night Court in enemy territory.